stretch your legs here, and then we'll go into the last few segment of public files and legal documents.
Maybe much less.
Yeah, no, it's not. We'll say 5 minutes or so if you need to check email and that kind of thing. Again, with the public file, we mentioned when you're reviewing the public file, you want to be sure that you download a copy of the station license and take it with you. I always try to write down the pertinent information about the station, such as frequency, TPO, antenna information, license expiration date, because you're going to always want to look at that, as well as license renewal. Because there could be some cases in license renewal date that maybe the license was held up for whatever reason for a review, and maybe the license didn't get renewed for a couple of years. Well, the Commission says that the public file update starts when you received your license. So if your license was renewed in, say, 2013, but that station didn't get a license until 2015, technically that FCC public file starts on the date of the renewal. So that would be 2015.
You wouldn't be concerned with the class of the station? Because I like, you know, when we're
well, if I know the power level, I know what the class of the station, I've got the license. So that's where all that information would be.
You know, like
yeah.
we were doing the translators a few years ago.
Yeah.
That you had, if you were a B or a C or what, you know,
yeah.
whatever, you had a different filing window.
Yeah, well, but see, that's not that way anymore, because now that was with the AMs. Now all that's changed. Everything is just by state and date of renewal. So again, get the license information, all the pertinent information, and be ready to take that with you so that you can inspect when you get on site. Some other things, we'll talk about station logs in just a moment, but you want to be certain that the station logs are available when you arrive on site for a period of 2 years. You want to be sure that the equipment performance measurements are available. Now this is kind of an interesting area because there's a spectral analysis and equipment performance. Equipment performance is a full testing of the equipment that's going into your site connected to the antenna. Television, that's usually done when they've changed out an exciter or a antenna or the transmitter. For radio, it could be the transmitter, the antenna, or the audio processor. Now, does anybody know why you would check it with the change out of an audio processor?
Modulation changes.
Pilot.
And pilot.
It's stereo generator, the pilot. That's the difference. That's the difference. So that's one of those little gotchas, and there's no way to tell. You just walk in, and if you see a brand new Omnia or Orban, you might ask, hey, did you do performance for the new generator?
You do the foolproof or just?
Spectral analysis. But I mean, today, it's not like a proof that we all are accustomed to. Most of us in this room came up. We did a proof. You hauled out the, it was all night. You hauled out the HP signal generator and distortion analyzer, and you sat there and you had to tweak the tubes on the transmitter so it would pass a proof, and you would run tones and everything else. Now you set up your Aritsu and yep, and about 5 minutes later, if it all went well, you're done, you've met the mask and everything's good, but you do want that documentation available. Now, if you're at a radio station, and there are a lot of these still around that might have an old Continental that's been around for 30 years, or maybe a BC1T or an F sitting out there that the local ham operator hadn't picked up and it's still on the air, there's not going to be a proof for that. So, different type of measurement there. Now, chief operators. Chief operator designation. You want to be sure that there is a designation. It can be posted in the public file under other documents, but it is to be available readily at the station. Again, that license notebook we talked about earlier, that would be a good location for that chief operator. I also like to see it at the transmitter site in that same license book. I'm sorry?
Normally it's not the chief engineer.
That a lot of times it's not, because here's where the chief operator, if you look in the rules, the chief operator can be the chief operator could be a part-time or contract engineer, or in some cases, depending on the type of broadcast facility, it would have to be a full employee of the broadcast facility. Directional AMs and stations, AMs operating over 10 kilowatts. So those are the ones you have to look after. So again, if there's a contract associated with it, that could be available, but the pricing on it is not made public. Station ID. You're going to go into a market and you're going to check a station. Check and see that they're running a legal ID at the top of the hour for both radio and television, and that technically doesn't mean 10 minutes to the hour or 15 minutes after the hour. That means as close to the top of the hour as absolutely possible in the normal flow of programming. And I know we've done everything on the face of the earth to hide a legal ID, because we obviously, as broadcasters, must be ashamed of our call letters. You know, I mean, I hear it all the time. WXYZ, Orangeburg, Columbia's temperature, or excuse me, Orangeburg's, Columbia's temperature is such and such. You know, even though they want to be Columbia, they're in Orangeburg. You know, it's no different here. Everybody does it. But it has to have the call letters, has to have the city of license, and what can you put between the call letters and the city of license? There's only one thing. Nope. Ownership. That's the only thing that they allow technically. Frequency can come afterwards, but not in the middle. It's got to be WXYZ Hoover. Simple as that. Now, this still shows up, and it's not, it's one of those rules they hadn't gotten rid of. Telephone access to the station. Can the general public call the radio station? Now, it was no different than the remote control. I've seen FCC inspectors go out and disconnect telephone lines to find out, you know, if what would happen under certain circumstances. But technically, if you have a radio station or a TV station that's a long distance call away, you need to be able to provide free access for the general public to get to that station.
Does somebody have to answer the phone?
Well, they should. Is there somebody there?
Not really. John, we got into discussion on the station that I contract for about a local number versus an 800 number.
Well, in today's business, I don't know if one really is any different than the other. An 800 number would allow free access. A local number at that station call forwarded to wherever the studios are is probably the same price depending on who you're getting your service from.
They're all DIDs anyway.
Yeah.
So it don't
Well,
matter.
in our case, it wasn't, and I advised them to disconnect the local business number that was just simply a call forward. This was it's a non-com that had
Yeah.
2 sites and were fed by a common studio, and one of them was like 100 miles away. And based on not only what I read out of the rules, but a free call to Larry Perry was to disconnect that one and just have them call the 800 number.
Yeah, I don't think the commission's ever said they just want to be sure that you can access. I mean, here's what it says, this is from the self-inspection. Must maintain a local or toll-free telephone number within the community of license. Studios, stations operating studio locations outside the community of license must make sure residents in the community have access to this number. So that'd be a number you'd publish on the air. Because nobody has phone
Could be a
books
local
anymore.
number or it could be an A number.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
We talked about the public file. Obviously, one of the questions is file maintained? Well, if you walk into a radio station or a TV station and they don't have an online public file, but there's a paper file still there, they're technically in violation of the rules. So they got to be online. Another little catch, reproduction of the public file. If somebody comes to your facility, do you have a place that they can sit down, look at the public file online, and print copies of the public file? You may charge a reasonable fee for that public file copies, but it's got to be reasonable, and basically it better be the same price as if you went to Kinko's or UPS or a local print shop, which could be 10, 15, 20 cents a page. Can't charge them $1 a page. You can get slapped for that. So, and by the way, if they come to your facility and they want to look at the online public file there, don't stick them in a closet. Be sure that they have a reasonable place to look at the public file. Of course, we talked about authorizations and applications. We know that's all in the public file, citizens agreements, contour maps, ownership reports, retention of ownership reports. These are all questions that come up. Then we go back again to issues and programs. Oh, before I get to that, political time, free political time. At one point in time, while this whole deal was going on about public files, political files and everything, and then the lowest earned unit rate, they came up with the station could give away free time.
George Mooney used to do that.
Yeah. You just had to give it to everybody, you know, and that's what you do. But you actually check and see if they give away free political time. It has to be noted, and you have to keep records on that. We talked about EEO. Letters from the public, those are gone. You still might find some letter files in there. That's been done away with. It's too hard to keep up with all that in the day of electronics. People text, people do social media, so there are multiple ways of communicating. We talked about investigative material, retention of investigative material, of course, quarterly issues and programs, donor list, time brokerage, joint sales, local announcements, and retention of local announcements. Any questions on the public file? All righty. Now, we don't have to have main studios anymore, but we have to have a studio somewhere, so you want to check on that. It just has to be accessible to the general public. Now, let's move on down. Some copies of non-public file documents. These are documents that aren't required to reside in the public file, though they can be there under other documents. But you should have, the station should have an engineering file. Some of these may be in that notebook we talked about where the licenses can be kept. NRSC measurements. Supposed to keep past 2 years. They're supposed to be measured every 12 to 14 months. And this is for every AM station. And the commission is specific about how to do the test. There are usually a number of engineers that go around that have spectrum analyzer or AM splatter monitor, various other pieces of equipment that can do these tests for the radio station. There are a lot of guys go around once a year and just charge a fee and send a report, and that's what you want. Do not let that slide, because it's very important for the AM documentation. I've run into a lot of stations that they just forget it. Or they try this game, oh, well, I'm going to wait till 14 months. That way, you know, over maybe a 5-year period, I might not have to pay the $300 or $500 for one visit from my local engineer, and then they forget, or the engineer can't make it for another 2 months, and now they're out of compliance. Station log, we're going to talk about that in a minute. We talked about the chief operator designation. Larry's getting an email from the FCC. Antenna structure registration. This is kind of an interesting document. This shows who owns the station. And for one reason or another, and I don't understand why this happens, but a station is sold from owner A to owner B. Owner A has his attorneys, owner B has his attorneys, and they charge all kind of money for filling out all the paperwork and seeing that everything's done. And 99 out of 100 times, they never transfer the ASR registration. It never happens. And that's something you want to check on because it's a violation of the rules if that document is not up to date. The commission wants to know if there is a problem who they need to call. So if Station A still shows they're on the ownership, but Station B actually owns it, that document's outdated.
And if the lights are out,
Well, we won't even talk about that. That
They
gets
will
even,
call you.
yeah, they will call you.
They
you know
will
what I'm
call
saying?
you.
Then they find out it's not the right person.
Oh,
If
they-
they
oh, it-
transfer, then the person that originally owned it
Yeah.
is liable, right?
Well, technically, but not necessarily. I'll jump ahead to that just because you brought up an interesting situation. I bet everybody knows somebody that leases tower space. And that's great. Antennas up at the top. Somebody else is doing all the tower light readings. They're doing the quarterly tower light checks and everything. And you notice over a period of time the lights are out. Whose responsibility is it? Well,
You want it?
you own it, but say the FAA's been and the FCC's been calling the tower owner and he's not responding.
He's in, well, we had that one time.
And you know who's going to be responsible? You are.
Well, but the state,
You
well,
answer the phone.
That's right.
well, I was gonna tell you what happened. They had a station across the Tennessee line, and the tower lights had been out. Well, the guy would go over there with the bush hog cutting grass, and somehow or another he got right up to the building where the power was coming out. He had cut it, and he tell them about it. Well, this went on for about a month, and then nobody had informed the FAA. The tower out, so the mayor called the FCC.
Well, this is getting ugly.
And the FCC come down there and looked and checked several times. And I told them, I said, hey guys, y'all need to get them fixed. Well, they walked up to the station and said, y'all need to get this done today. They called me and said, hey man, would you come fix these tower lights? I said, I'm not even in the daggone in the state right now, so no. It's gonna be a week before I get back. Well, it got pretty nasty there for a minute. Yeah, we got back on. It got pretty nasty.
I'd believe it. I've seen cases where the owner didn't fix the tower lights,
Yep.
and the broadcaster that was on the tower
Call it.
got a call,
That's right.
and they gave him 30 days to fix the tower lights. It was a 1,200-foot tower near a naval air station.
Yeah.
And the owner did one better. He moved. So they were fighting it out with the owner of the radio station moved, and they were fighting it out with the owner of the tower and the FAA for a while. So it got ugly. Well, anyway,
So the bottom line is, if you're on a tower and the lights are out there, have been out for a long time, and you contact the tower owner yourself personally and say, look, you gotta fix these lights, and you've got that in writing a couple of times,
Yeah, document it. That's right.
you can
But
still
you're
be
still
held
responsible.
responsible.
Still gonna
That
be
is
responsible.
correct, because this is a public safety
and see,
issue.
this
Yep.
is what's bad about this, is you're on somebody's tower, and it's like, okay, I'm calling the FCC on you about your tower light.
And you
That
calling
doesn't
them on
make you-
yourself.
And
They
it-
put us in a
yeah,
really
you
bad
don't make any
position.
friends that way with your
No,
tower.
sir.
You might say, well, your lease just ran out.
That's right.
Well, hey, you don't know till you have your brother-in-law living on a mountaintop with a 300-foot tower in the backyard that they couldn't get the tower lights on, and he's calling the FCC and the FAA, and I'm getting calls from Atlanta saying, do you know this guy? And I said, yeah, why? He said, well, they keep calling us about tower lights. Do you think there's a problem? I said, yep, there's a problem up there. They got it straightened out real quick. So, I mean, they take that stuff seriously. They really do.
Well, I mean, and then
They
it's-
came down.
Yeah.
I mean, he came down.
Oh, yeah, Daryl.
What we do, we're on Channel 6's time,
Yeah,
and they keep up with it. They have a
Yeah.
notification system. But anytime they have a light out, we have a deal set with them, they email me.
Yeah,
I just keep the emails in
That's
a
fine.
folder on my computer that has everybody in the station has access to.
yep, that's,
And that's because I'm not gonna write it in my,
Oh, no.
my EAS log and stuff every time.
yeah. Tim,
Incidents in Knoxville, we had, when I first went to work for the family-owned company that I worked for before I went back to university, they had a 3-tower, 50-kilowatt directional AM. It was sold. Just like John said, the ASR information was not transferred. And one night while I'm in the middle of engineering a Tennessee basketball game, my studio engineer calls and says, I've got somebody on the phone from the FCC and he says our tower lights are out. Well, after you get past the initial, oh, you know what,
Yeah.
And you ask them, because we still at that time still had a 10 kilowatt 4-tower DA, and I got monitors on all of them, okay, great. My monitors have not called me. Well, what was worse was I was paying a guy $50 a month who lived close to there just to go out. Are the lights on? Write it down on a piece of paper, and the end of the month send it to me, I'll give you $50. It turns out that what it was this 3-tower DA that wasn't even on the air anymore, that had been sold. The land underneath the radio station had been sold. They were about to develop it. The tower lights were off, and unfortunately, my name was still on the ASR because they had never transferred it. And I wound up during halftime of the basketball game having a conversation with a guy at the FAA office, and he said, well, just so you know, we're turning this over to enforcement.
Oh.
So the next day, I'm calling a friend of mine who's a communications attorney and saying, whatever it takes, whatever I need to do, get my name off of that ASR. So it can happen.
oh
It did
yeah,
happen.
they're very
Because
serious
I'm gonna
about
tell you this
this.
too now.
Oh yeah,
As long as that tower's still up there, you have to maintain those lights.
yeah.
Whether it's
You have
on
to
or off.
That's what a
And-
sawzall's for, man.
You have to
Yeah,
maintain it.
and even here's another, if the tower's been abandoned and the owner's gone, the tower's still there, and the bills aren't getting paid, and the power company turns the lights off, power company's got to turn the lights back on. They can't kill the power to that site. Yeah, it's a public safety issue, so,
Whoa,
oh yeah.
one run that would like that, it's got a back power bill.
Access to current FCC rules.
Got a great website for that.
That's exactly right. Nobody has a printed copy that's up to date.
I finally threw mine away.
Yeah.
And all the little updates.
Yeah, well, Pike and Fisher. We all had Pike and Fisher, and there was I can't remember Rules Service Company. Yeah, Rules Service Company, and we all paid dearly for the latest update of the rules, so we would have more updated rules than the inspector did when he showed up. But now you can find it all on the website. Now let's go back to the station log. Station log's a great document. Nobody seems to understand outside of this room what a station log is. I go into stations and I'll see what the guy says is a station log, and it has transmitter readings on it. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't dare tell you not to take transmitter readings, because you've got to prove that you're operating legally. How can you do that if you don't have some piece of equipment or some human being monitoring the station? But it's not part of the station log. Station log is EAS activity. It is tower lights. And it is any abnormal operation of your broadcast facility. So, the station log, and we have copies. I'm going to pass them around. Oh, Larry came back. I thought I'd run him off.
Oh, no.
This is a log form, contrary to what other people believe and got published in Radio Guide. This is Larry's log form. He developed this thing. How many years ago, Larry?
Well, let's
10?
see. I started in broadcasting.
When you were 10?
No, the first remote I ever did was at the parting of the Red Sea, I think.
Oh, okay. You were a little bit ahead of me,
Yeah.
not much.
Okay.
But this is a great log form. It's on the Alabama website. It's been published A couple other people claimed it, I saw recently, but they didn't write it. He is the original. And on this log form, it has required monthly tests received, required monthly tests transmitted. It has an explanation of required monthly tests not received or transmitted. It has sources for 2 stations plus IPAWs. It has 5 weeks, because some months have 5 weeks and some have 4. Required weekly test transmitting. Explanation of failures. Notation of tower light malfunctions and corrective action. And the weekly log review by the chief operator or designee. Now I'm going to take the next document. And we were talking so much about tower lights.
We did this so that to save paper, so you could keep a whole month's worth of EAS on, and you can actually do this electronically. It's in a PDF form, and you can copy and paste it from your DASDEC or your Sage unit.
I updated it to my last version of it, because I lost WSGN. I did away with all that.
Oh, yeah.
But I modified it and brought it up to 2016 Office, because it was the 2003 is whatever, and it wouldn't display correctly.
Oh, yeah.
So I fixed it, if anybody needs it.
Okay.
Well, anyway, this is a great document to utilize, and stations can utilize it however they want to. I go in every week and fill out this log weekly. And then at the end of the month, I also take all the printouts of my EAS box.
They put together.
And I staple it together and I put it in a file folder. Now, the commission says that you can use electronic documentation, and that's fine. I have no problem with that.
But if you lose it then,
Well, that's exactly right. Now, there are many ways to do it. You can cut and paste the information, and you can post it in your own forms, and you can electronically sign it. That's fine. That's acceptable. Just be sure that you aren't dependent on your only copy to be that in that DASDAC box or that Sage box or whatever brand you might have. Because it's not going to be if, it's going to be when that unit has a heart attack and you ship it back and you can't remember the password or you forget the password and they go into it and they wipe it all out. Or the hard drive goes and it's all gone, because it will happen. Yep. So don't be dependent on those boxes for your livelihood. Be dependent on some other form of documentation and either write it out or keep multiple electronic copies of it.
I just put an SSD in my hard drive.
Yeah, that's
stuck an SSD.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
You can do that.
yeah, that's a good. Which box did you have?
Sage.
Sage. Okay. I've been fortunate on mine. Mine's been okay so far.
And luckily it happened right at the front of the month.
No, okay.
Yeah.
I already deleted everything.
Yeah.
Does
Of
the new
course.
Sage box not have an SSD in it?
That one, the original 2008 model, that's when it came out, right?
I think it was somewhere in that time.
Oh, wait.
Talking about
Yeah.
the blue one up there. Is
Yeah.
that not an
Yeah.
SSD?
No, it doesn't.
Uh-uh.
Originally.
No.
It's got-
Not originally.
It's got a flying drive in it.
Yeah.
So, but I put a little $100 SSD in there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It works. It works just
I
great.
did have to modify it so it takes SATA. That was the only thing I had to do.
Now let's look at the log since everybody's got a copy of it, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good. I didn't know if you were getting ready to.
No, I was going to make a note here,
Yeah.
that a comment that one of the neat things, the reason I did this, you can see at a glance a whole month, and if you see you've been missing something from a monitor input from one of your stations that you're monitoring, it's easy to see that. You see a blank place there that you missed it, so you can go back. Unfortunately, these things quite often sit in the back room and nobody pays any attention to them, and you could lose a monitor point, monitor input, and that's why the commission asks you to do this weekly, to make sure that those things have not failed.
Okay, I've got a question.
Yes.
When you have, for instance, like APT, not doing a weekly or whatever, and then it says explanation, well, actually it says required monthly test. Do you have to, when it's missing, do you have to call them up? Do you have to know
Yes.
why?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have
Yes.
to find somebody that you
Yes.
see to call.
Yes.
Well, let me tell you, in Alabama, and this is something I dumped on myself a long time ago, because people are reluctant to call their crosstown competition. If you're missing stuff from one of your monitors, send me an email and I'll do the dirty work. Because we keep a database, as most of you know that's in Alabama. We have an FTP server, which we have over 140 different SAGEs and DASDECs reporting to me every second. That send stuff to me, I get everything they do. And I sit down and I create a database. I've yet to find a software to do it automatically, so I do it manually right now. But I do that because I want to make sure that our distribution system is working. So I know when people are not getting things. And I'll usually, if I see a station's been missing something for a couple of weeks in a row, I'll normally send an email to the engineer and say, you need to check your monitor on input number 2 because you're not getting anything. So.
And thank Larry, because I know of no other state that's doing this. So aside from growing beautiful roses, you're still doing that, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't go hair anymore.
Oh, well, I don't have that either. So, but he does keep this database, which is very valuable. But in the real world situation, it is the responsibility of the chief operator to call the offending broadcaster and find out why they did not send, if they didn't send, an EAS test.
Check
And
your
if-
equipment first.
Yeah, check your equipment
so
always
you're not
first.
embarrassed to calling them.
Yep. So that is your, and that's spelled out in the rules and regulations.
And then one more follow-up on that. So, on my DTV receiver, those things are somewhat notorious about locking up. Let's say the station drops, transmitter for a while, it comes back up, I'll just find it locked up. I mean, and so if you miss that one, you can say my DTV
Sure.
receiver locked up,
That's
that's
it.
okay?
That's okay, yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
But
Even-
where they'll
even-
get you is if I'm coming in and I'm doing a really tough inspection, and I know that I'm starting to find a lot of problems, so now you're starting to dig. Same way with the FCC, if the Enforcement Bureau is coming in, and they find out you started to miss a bunch of tests and you didn't have anything written down as to why, now you're in violation because it's very specific. That's why this thing has to be filled out once a week. Not once a month, not every 3 weeks or whatever. It's once a week. The chief operator shall sit down and review the station log and see. And what you have, with exceptions, there are some stations exceptions, but typically you receive a test from an LP1, a test from an LP2. You receive the IPAWS test, you send a test. And then the monthly, you receive 2 tests and you send a test. There are some exceptions to the rule depending on how the state plan is set up. Now, in addition, as part of the inspection, we don't have it in here, we'll talk about it in a minute, you got to be sure that every station has a copy of the state plan and the current state plan, as well as the EAS handbook.
Yeah, we'll go through that after lunch. We'll go through EAS completely and everything.
But this is just a great document. I've used these for years. I pass them out for years. And I mean, if you just handwrite it down, it takes 5 minutes. I mean, I waste more time driving to campus to fill this out. I probably could do it at my house if I really wanted to, but I want the logs to be there on site, and I can check other stuff. But at 5 minutes at the most. Now, here's one problem I ran into, and it was kind of a funny problem. I'm reviewing logs not long ago, and I noticed I'm doing station XYZ, and all of a sudden I noticed, well, there's a test from XYT and XYK. What was that? So I went in and talked to the chief operator. Oh gosh, I must have cut and pasted the wrong thing when I was doing my weekly log. Because he has like 5 or 6 stations, so he's cutting and pasting from each one of them. And so he accidentally, I mean, you know, you're going to ask him to correct it. I mean, it was an honest mistake, but at least if you're doing it the old-fashioned way, it usually prevents something like that happening, unless you get behind. So any questions on the station log?
This one's a little, what happened to your initial down there?
What I do
Say initial.
now,
No, that's
I
just,
get the year done,
this is down
Right.
here.
I scan them,
It says initial.
put them in the
Oh,
file.
yeah, we
and put them
changed
in the
that.
back
There's no need to do
into
that
the
because
cloud server
the operator
with the
reviewed
backup.
it.
Yep.
Chief operator.
And
That's
chunk the
fine.
paper.
Yeah, you can do that. That's fine, as long as you have documentation on it. That's no
But I keep a
problem.
notebook for while the year is going on.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, They go to the class.
That's the way I pretty much do mine. Now, on this, of course, you've got tower light malfunctions, because now the difference on the tower light side is if you just have a monitor that only monitors tower lights and it's all manual, you've got to check it every day. And that means within 30 minutes of sunset. And that means the unit can call you, you can call it, but I mean, it's manual. It's the old-fashioned way. Now, there are units out on the marketplace that will monitor the beacons. And the commission's very specific. Each beacon level is required to be monitored. Side markers, that's a different story. But the beacons are what's critical. And you can buy these boxes for $500–600. And it'll monitor the beacons. Now, what you can do if you've got two beacons and one drops out or one bulb drops out, the voltage reading is going to drop down, and then it will automatically call you. But the boxes that are available will stay on 24 hours a day, and they are set up so that unless those bulbs fail, it's not going to bother you, and then it'll call you. That particular situation is why we have this malfunction, because then it'll call you and tell you it's a malfunction. Also remember, quarterly, and we'll talk about this later, you have to check all those systems to be sure that they're operating properly. The other thing that would go on here is if you were, on the notes, if you were operating and maybe you went on your aux transmitter, or there was some other issue or something like that, you would make the notations in the station log.
Yeah, there's actually three things that go on the station log. One is all the EAS information. The second is any malfunction of the tower lights. I was told by an FCC inspector that you don't really have to make a notation that you checked them, just only if there's a malfunction. And of course somebody said, well, how do you gonna know they malfunction if you don't check them? Well, you do. You just, according to the rules, you only have to make a written notation of any malfunction and what you did to correct it. And the third thing, as John was talking about, is anything in the transmission system that's abnormal, something's gone wrong in the transmission, you have to make some notation about that and what you did to correct it.
Yeah.
Okay, so July is when Channel 6 is starting their antenna swap. On the list is 22 days. I'm gonna be back and forth between my aux antenna, my main antenna, my aux transmitter, and my aux.
See the backside of this report?
Yeah, because it's gonna, you know, because we're gonna go high power, low power as they climb by. You know?
Well, here's probably how I would handle that. You have a maintenance log. Well, you have automatic remote control.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's all going to be printed on your remote control, correct?
Can be.
I would just
use a remote control.
I would use a remote control, have that printed, make a notation in my maintenance log and on my station log that over this period of time you operated at reduced power, and attach a copy of that log to it, so if there was ever any question, you have that information.
And reference that to the repack.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, because everybody's going to be going through that. I mean, that's just a given. Now, Larry, he does such wonderful things. You have more time than any person has seen. I mean, but this is a great documentation. I keep this at the radio stations that have tower lights, because the one thing about it, if you get an alarm, it has all the information, what to ask for, who to call, everything. And it's still the same old thing. When you call up to Lockheed, I think it is.
Lockheed Martin.
Yep, they will answer, and you will give them the pertinent information, tower location, the ASRN, and of course, you know, it doesn't hurt to always have your longitude and latitude, because of occasionally things happen.
And but that's on that sheet.
That's right. But you want to be certain that you get the initials or whatever they give you from the FAA. Do not forget that, because that's important. That's your ticket if something happens, because if your tower lights go out, and a plane hits it, the first thing they're going to do, I don't care if it's in the middle of the day, they're going to, oh, the tower, you know. So this protects you. Now again, small market stations that don't have sophisticated remote controls, maybe they're running a sign system or broadcast tools or something, and somebody has to physically check that. Be sure that that operator is checking it every day at the appropriate time, because that's the difference between a major lawsuit and not if something happens. Greg?
Is FCC and FAA ever going to get together with NAD 27, NAD 83, 84?
No, I mean, that's about the same thing as the Weather Service and EAS getting together for IPAWS, so probably not in our lifetime.
And then back on incremental, whether it be feet or meters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen.
No, I don't think it's going to happen. So, any other
You
questions?
mentioned something about quarterly light inspections?
Yes.
Okay, and what do you do during that inspection?
You check all systems to ensure that they are functioning properly. That means all the tower lights are working, all the side markers are working, and that your alarming systems are working properly. Most of the boxes have either a switch or some mechanism that you can simulate a failure.
Or you can go out and just put a sock over the.
Yeah, over the photo cell, exactly. But what I always love doing, and here, if you want to have a little fun with everybody in here has probably a chief operator or an ops manager at some station. You know, Saturday mornings is a great time to check your quarterly tower light, do your quarterly tower light inspection, because I could go up in the building and simulate a failure, and oh, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and I could get even with that guy who's the chief operator who happens to also do the programming and everything else, because it's calling him first before it calls me. So I'm terrible, I know.
Yeah.
But you can simulate and make it work.
Okay.
Simple as that.
Now, for the very less sophisticated, like you were saying, you're paying someone's saying paying on $50 a month to go out and look at the lights, and then they're supposed to give you a report, right, or something in
Yeah.
writing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's twice. Is that twice a day? Or
Well,
is it
once
just
every 24 hours.
Once every 24 hours within 30 minutes of local sunset.
Okay, for some reason I thought it was like, look at the daytime when it was like, if it was a daylit tower and at night.
Well, if it's within 30 minutes of sunset, you could do 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after, and you could look at it either way. But I mean, if it's daylight and it's lit during the day, you're going to have to inspect day and night to be sure that it's operating at the proper levels. Because you have, if it's a strobe, it's a different intensity level in the daytime versus nighttime, and you have to check all that as well.
The reason that I had this fella checking that was because it was the tower one, the reference tower, was a very, very hot tower. The reactance on it is like minus J 480 something. And there was nothing that we could, I'm serious, and there's nothing that we could put in there that would work in that high of an RF field that I could count on to report to me automatically. Now I did find something later, a little coil that was made by a company out of North Carolina that I was able to put on the whole tower, and it looked at like if one beacon went out, that drop in current draw across it would trigger an alarm.
Yeah, TLM
And,
1 or 2,
yeah. I finally was able to use one of those, but before that, this was just such a high RF instance that nothing worked out there. I couldn't even use the solid state beacon flashers like most people use. I still had to have a switch and a motor because that was the only way those lights would work.
Yeah, I agree with you. So
you've been to that facility?
yeah, I have been to that facility. That thing was so hot you drive by and you get burned. I mean,
You could stand at the fence, and the fence was 20 feet. And as a matter of fact, I extended it on one side to get rid of the RFR problem. But you could stand there with a little greeny screwdriver and stand next to the fence and draw an arc.
Wow.
And what caused this situation?
oh, it's
sorry?
a hot AM tower.
Just a hot
50
tower.
kilowatts.
It's a very reactive hot tower. The common, there's no, I'm sorry, oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought. It's, we measured it out and calculated it, and it's something along the equivalent of 13 kilovolts. Yeah.
My question is, why would you want to hurt a greenie?
The cooler thing to do is to take a fluorescent tube and go stick it in the phaser and watch it light up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do that.
The,
Worked on the fence to me.
if you're using the farmer down the street or across the street from your tower to call you when there's out, make sure it just make up, and I don't have one with me, I've seen some at stations, a little package of sheets that they initial each day that they checked it, and they turn them into, I mean, because you just can't say, and I've been to stations where I say, how do you check your tower lights? Well, the farmer across the street will call me if they're out.
Yeah.
I said, is he actually notating on something? No, he just calls me if they're out. Well, no, you gotta have, and what the station I saw had got some printing company to make a little thing with some pages in it, and he would just sign it each day, and then the engineer would go by and pick it up for him every time he would go out
I got
there.
mine to mail it to me with an invoice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to do
And
it.
in Alabama, they'll just get a rifle out there and shoot out the tower light and then light it.
Well, I'll tell y'all an interesting story. I was doing an inspection down on the South Carolina coast a number of years ago, and it had been a tough inspection. I mean, there were a lot of violations. The market manager didn't realize there were problems, and they'd called us in to go and do ABIP. And so I go out to the tower site. They had multiple sites, and went out to this one combined site and engineer. And I'd known the guy for years, so that bugs you even more. It'd be like visiting any of your guys' sites and finding all kind of problems and everything. You wouldn't expect it. And he pitches me the keys, and he says, I'll go on in the transmitter building. I'm going to close the gate behind me because it was in an area they didn't want to leave the gate open anytime. And he said, the light switch is on the inside of the wall, so the first thing I do is open the door, and I start to reach in, and I stopped. And then I realized right next to the light switch was the main disconnect panel with no cover at all. So now I'm really starting to get upset. So then I go on in, and I find all the lighting monitoring equipment stacked on the floor in the corner. So, you know, this is going downhill fast. So I asked the engineer, I said, so we haven't got to look at the logs yet. I want to know how you check your tower lights. Well, I live in the subdivision 2 streets over. I keep a log at home. Well, it was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said, okay. I said, that's fine. Let's go to dinner now. And I purposely kept him out for a couple of hours, and we went back to the station for some other stuff. I said, okay, in the morning, we're doing the station logs. I'll be here at 8 o'clock. I want to see your logs. I know that guy was writing all night long trying to do logs because I could tell from the looks at them. So be sure that they have documentation and you check that on a regular basis, because that's a safety issue, and the commission will have you. That's when enforcement shows up. You don't want any part of it. So anyway, we're at a good point for lunch.